this is Silver Stories.
So please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Claire Sarnowski. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, but I'm currently finishing my sophomore year at Boston University. I am speaking on this podcast to talk about my friendship with an elderly person who just so happened to be a Holocaust survivor. And I'm really excited to be able to share my story and perspective, as well as talk a little bit about him and our friendship. And I'm also the author of Remember My Story, a book that was published in January of 2024. That's a memoir about how I worked with this Holocaust survivor to make history in our home state of Oregon.
Awesome. So firstly, can you talk a little bit about why storytelling is important to you and how that led to what you did with Alter?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, my family always talked, whether that was about their experiences, whether it was storytelling, whether it was about things that they had learned throughout life. And I grew up around my grandma, who was a very avid storyteller, and would talk a lot about her experiences and the experiences of her family. Also, my parents talked to me a lot about their life and just different stories from their childhood or from their college days. And growing up, that was something that was very prevalent in my household. We talked a lot about life and experiences and stories. And I think that really sparked my interest in storytelling. I would say I was also, when I was younger, and I still am, but especially when I was younger, a very avid reader and writer. So I always loved to create my own stories or to listen to other people's stories and then be inspired to, make my own story from that. So I think that I always kind of had storytelling in my genes, so to speak, or just something that was really important to me. And then the older that I got and the more that I was, involved in reading or in school and meeting new people, the more I really saw the value of storytelling, because I believe whether you're telling a true story, whether it's a fictional story, no matter what story that you are telling, you're trying to do it in a way that evokes something from the audience or the person that you're telling it to. And I feel like that's how some of the best things happen in everyday life. Like ideas that come out is through storytelling. Or maybe that's how you connect with someone, is through a shared story or an interest. So I really saw that storytelling was a big part of my everyday life and something that brought me a lot of joy and brought me a lot of connection to people. And when I had the opportunity to meet Alter, I knew how important it was, because my mom, and this is actually where storytelling ties in perfectly, my mom would always share the story of how her family visited Germany during her summer vacation when she was around 10, I believe. And she went and saw a lot of historical places. My grandfather was a teacher, so he made it certain that my mom and her sister were able to see very historically relevant places. And one of the places that they went was Dachau, the concentration camp. And my mom always shared with me, even before, I heard anything about Alter, being able to meet him or hear him speak, that experience was life-changing for her and her sister. And it's something that was such a dark place in history and such a hard place to visit. But hearing her stories and her recounting her experiences really showed me the importance of being able to learn about history, whether it's through places, whether it's through people. And that actually is what inspired her to encourage me and my aunt to invite me to hear Alter when he spoke at my aunt's school, where she was a teacher at. And that really allowed me to hear him, and storytelling kind of opened up the door for us to meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's crazy and really beautiful that you live such a different life than how Alter lived, and yet you were still able to connect. Why do you think that is?
I think something that we don't realize enough, and especially people in our generation don't realize enough, but in general, I don't think the world appreciates the fact that although there's so much in our world that can be really polarizing, that we are so much more alike than we are different. Even people that you view as different than yourself, as can be, you still have so much in common with them and so many things that are similar that you don't realize on the surface. And when we start to realize that, I really do believe that we really get the peak value of the human connection and the human experience by being able to relate to people, or being able to build friendships, or even listen to each other's stories and learn from each other. And for me, I think that's how I really connected with Alter, is although we are so different here we had Alter. When I met him, I was 9 years old. Alter was in his late 80s. He had been through some of the worst horrors in history, and I was just an elementary schooler with an everyday life. He was Jewish and I'm Catholic, so there were a whole bunch of differences that, you know, it was unlikely. Everyone always says, oh, it was an unlikely friendship. And while that's very true, and we had all these differences on paper, the similarities that we had, whether it was our love of education or our desire to make change, or even just being able to talk to people and have connection, that all allowed us to be friends way more than any of our differences did. And I believe that that is true in most cases, but we just don't really give it the opportunity to kind of think outside the box or take the blindfold off of our eyes and see that we are all very similar to each other.
That's really beautiful. What do you hope people will get out of listening to the stories of older generations?
As I mentioned, in my experience, obviously, Alter was a big catalyst for storytelling in my life and inspired me to tell my own story, whether it's speaking, like speaking here, or in my book. But the main thing that I learned was how important it is to listen to the wisdom and the experiences of those who are older than us. And I think being a young kid, we so often kind of get rid of the idea like, oh, our parents aren't cool, or what do our grandparents know? And we kind of have that belief because, you know, we're young, we don't know any differently. But I think meeting Alter really helped me see that you can learn from perspectives. You can learn from people who have lived longer than you have, or who lived a completely different life. There's still stuff that you can learn from them. And I, you know, experience this too with other elders in my life, whether it be family friends or my grandma. That was something that was so important, was like talking to people, being able to have conversations. For example, I have a neighbor who is a very dear friend, and she has had life experiences unlike anyone else that I know. And just connecting with and talking to her and learning from her, I've learned so much, and it's made me such a richer person. And same thing with Alter. When you meet people who have these life experiences that you can never dream of or you can't relate to, it makes it all that much more beautiful to be able to say that you learned something from that.
How has storytelling and the history of older generations impacted your life? You know, what have you taken away from hearing the stories of Alter and all of that? And, like, how does it feel? First of all, I mean, it's not every day you come across a Holocaust survivor. And I think that, like, that's almost an honor to, right, like, stand in front of them. And you mentioned extensively about how Alter was just so much of a loving person, of, you know, welcoming everybody and never judging anybody. How does that feel firsthand to meet somebody like that?
It's truly incredible. And in Alter's case, I think it was very special knowing what he had been through. Mm-hmm. Because for me, the thing that shocked me so much as being a 9-year-old sitting in that audience and hearing him speak was that here you had somebody who endured the unimaginable. He had lost 123 members of his family. He had to completely rebuild his entire life. His adolescence and end of his childhood was completely ripped away from him. And yet he had the confidence, he had the desire, and he had the love in his heart to stand up in front of this audience. And he spoke to almost 1,000 audiences all across Oregon and also across the Pacific Northwest and even the country. And to get up there and speak and spread a message, not of any sort of hate or intolerance or anger about what happened to him, but instead a message of love and resilience and the desire to, as he would always say, to be better rather than bitter. And that's something that he really embodied. So being able to hear that, it really impacted me firsthand and changed the way I viewed a lot of stuff in my life. Like, I remember Alter talking about, he told a story in his presentation, how people don't understand what it means to say I'm starving, because he actually did starve when he did not have food, and he had to eat sawdust and even ate snow to keep himself alive. And ever since I heard that, I never once would say to my friends, hey, I'm starving, like, let's grab something to eat. I would never use that phrase because that meaning completely changed for me. And it's stuff like that that really did impact my life because it stuck with me. And being able to hear his story and his messages and his wisdom also changed the way I treat people, the way that I live my life, the quotes that I hold close to my heart, all of that stuff.
And in your opinion, how should people like cherish the stories of seniors, and like where do they start? I mean, for me, it started when I was little and I was kind of used to that, but how do you really like get into learning about other people and like cherishing these stories?
I think the main thing is to just be present. So often we are not present. We are somewhere else. Even if we think we're paying attention, our minds are elsewhere. And I know that especially for our generation, where technology is all over and school is busy and we like to think we're thinking about a million different things at one time. And it seems like our attention span is not what it should be. And I think the main thing is just be present. People will share their stories with you because they want to tell you them. And it's because it means something to them. And it's almost like a gift. Like when someone gives you something, the proper and polite and respectful thing to do is listen to it and cherish it. And I think stories and narratives are a gift. And it's our responsibility to do everything we can to be thankful for that, to cherish that. And the best way of appreciation is listening and actually caring. And the more that someone interacts or engages with someone, it may be a simple conversation that you meet someone in line at the grocery store and you chat with them, or you volunteer at a senior center and you talk to someone there. The conversations that you have, you need to have a genuine interest, a genuine desire to have that conversation, and really appreciate the fact that someone's sharing a piece of themselves in hopes that you will get something from them. And the more that we do that, the more we are able to kind of complete that pieces of the mosaic that kind of makes up who we are. Because something that I just think is so cool, and it's something that your project really reminds me of, is that I really believe that we are little pieces of everyone that we've met, that we pick up along the way. Like every time that I'm like cutting a piece of paper, I always think about what my kindergarten teacher used to tell me, because that's something that, has stuck with me all these years. And for the rest of my life, I will probably always cut paper and think about how I need to cut in a straight line because of her. And the stuff like that really like sticks with you. And it's the bits and pieces that you gather from other people, from what they share with you, from how they talk to you, from the interactions you have, that really makes that mosaic to be the clear picture of who you are. And I think that although every little piece of that in your life is so, so small, the impact that it can have, just like meeting Alter, can be completely life-changing and make your picture and mosaic of your life something completely different than you ever imagined it could be.
Well, thank you. Do you have anything else you want to add or anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that this goes for all ages, but especially people our age and young people. I would say one of the best things you can do is, if you have someone in your life, especially if they are an elder, I would really recommend talking to them, asking them questions, maybe interviewing them, taking time out of your day to call them up or go see them in person if you have the opportunity, and tell them that you're interested in hearing about their story, and maybe ask some questions about their life, or just talk with them about, something in particular that that they're interested in, because those discussions are so priceless. And like I said, it can really change the person that you become. But unfortunately, some senior stories, just like our stories down the line, will not be preserved forever. And if we don't listen to them, if we don't cherish them, if we don't write them down, we risk preserving them. And that's something that is so difficult. It's something that should be cherished, something that should be respected and preserved. And I wouldn't want someone's amazing story to be lost because they felt that people didn't show interest. So 100%, I think, being able to do that. And if a story inspires you so much, to go and make change where you see fit, and go out there and really do something that inspires you and brings you joy and that you have passion for.